What is up, heroes? This is MidniteZer0, and welcome back to Heat of the Week. This is going to be week 6, and I hope you guys are ready because this week, especially when you compare it to last week, there's quite a bit more heat. I'm actually pretty excited to get right into it. So despite this Lanakila remix, you know, very nice, chill, very cool, very icy place, this video, there's gonna be some heat that you're gonna enjoy seeing. So let's not wait any longer. Let's get right into it. The first Pokemon for Heat of the Week, number 5, is going to be MAMOS from Gearhart, coach of the Seattle Star Raptors. Now, this MAMOS in particular, if you did watch the match, it was pretty important in the matchup. It played a pretty big role in the outcome of the game. That said, it wasn't really due in particular to its heat, and that's why it's sitting at number 5 right now. That said, it was heat enough to make the top 5, and this week in particular, it wasn't as much of a struggle to find the top 5 heat mons. You know, there were actually quite a few more, and I had to do a selective process. But enough about the process in general, let's get into this MAMOS. When you look at this EV spread, you're probably like, why is there such an interesting EV spread? And admittedly, I'm not 100% on or in the know as well. However, I do know that the speed investment is there so that this MAMOS would outspeed a minimum speed Heatran, and you can obviously OHKO it with Earthquake. It is Assault Vest and Thick Fat, and it's got a little bit of HP and Spit Def. I believe those are to help tank Lava Plumes from Heatran, making this a really solid switch into Lava Plumes. It's also really helpful for Flash Cannons. Sorry, a little under the weather, but yeah, so this can tank hits from that. It can also tank Sludge Bombs from Skuntank, which Gearhart was really prepping for, really fearing in this particular matchup. Also, it's really helpful for Slowbro. Slowbro is a mon that was typically going to want to come in on MAMOS, going to go for Scalds, maybe even try to set up in its face. And because of the Assault Vest, because of a little bit of bulk investment, it's actually able to take Scalds decently well and fire back a pretty powerful Freeze Dry, which hits really hard thanks to that 132 special attack EVs. Ice Shard is typical for priority, Earthquake is stab. Superpower is there for something like Skuntank. Actually, not exactly Skuntank. Earthquake would be better. I'm not 100% sure. It could be for potential Balloon Tran, if I imagine. But the main heat here is the Assault Vest and that EV spread, and using MAMOS, something that is typically countered or at least checked by Slowbro and Heatran, to beat him back. So pretty creative, pretty cool, good stuff to Gearhart. Now, moving on to the next Pokemon. The next Pokemon we've got is KOMMO-O, also from Gearhart, coach of the Seattle Star Raptors. Now, when we get into this KOMMO-O set, the first thing I want to direct your attention to is that EV spread and the move Noble Roar. That's really the heat here. We've got near max HP, just about max special defense. We got a Spit Def boosting nature with leftovers. Clearly, this is a bulky KOMMO-O, and this was primarily his answer to Skuntank, which gave his team a really difficult time. It can take Sludge Bombs, Dark Pulses. It's actually immune to Sludge Bombs because of Bulletproof, which is also helpful for Venusaur, resisting and being even immune to one of its stabs. Able to phase it out if it wants to try and, you know, set up maybe Leech Seeds or try to recover and such, to kind of get it out of there because it's a really bulky Pokemon. Sky Uppercut and Dragon Claw are there as really solid stab moves, and Noble Roar, and a lot of you, if you didn't watch the match, you probably don't even know what Noble Roar does, like I didn't before the match. It actually lowers the opponent's attack and special attack by 1 stage. Why is that important? Well, KOMMO-O typically is pretty bulky in this, or with this particular spread, and is going to force some switches. Not a lot's going to be able to do a ton of damage to this, and it fears taking, you know, certainly not weak Dragon Claws or Sky Uppercuts. And depending on the situation, Gearhart would maybe want to go for a Noble Roar, meaning that whatever comes in is going to have its attack and special attack lowered, easing his ability to pivot with the other defensive mons he was bringing on that particular team. So overall, it kept his mons healthier, it eased prediction, it lowered risk in various different moves, so it was really good team support. So this KOMMO, even though it didn't do like a whole lot, it got some of those Noble Roars off. It did exactly what it was intended to do in supporting the team, outside of course, those poison Pokemon that didn't end up showing up. And so with that, let's move on to the third Pokemon for Heat of the Week, and that Pokemon is going to be ALOMOMOLA from Professor Willow, coach of United Kingler. Now, ALOMOMOLA is a really bulky Pokemon. It's got an incredible HP stat, making it an incredible Wish Passer. So, you know, running Regenerator, not a surprise. It's great for that health. Wish, not a surprise. Wish Protect even, not a super big surprise. Aqua Jet, not even crazy heat itself. ALOMOMOLA typically runs Scald, but sometimes they run Aqua Jet for that little bit of priority. Not that either of those is going to be doing much damage, but it is something, right? And what's really cool about this is not even necessarily the EV spread. The EV spread is pretty standard. It's got Impish, which is going to increase its defense while lowering its special attack. So it can take a good amount of physical attacks. It can definitely take a solid amount of special attacks, given all that SPDEF investment, all that natural HP bulk, and further HP investment. But what is really cool here is the eject button primarily. Mirror Coat is neat. It's really useful in that, you know, ALOMOMOLA is so bulky, and with all this bulk investment, it can tank hits really well. And because of its incredible HP stat, when you go for Mirror Coat, all the HP in damage, all the damage you took from a particular special attack, you do double that in damage back to whatever ends up against you. So when you're going up against something like Jolteon, which can Volt Switch, which will only do, you know, a third of your HP, you're doing, you know, which I guess at level 50 is like, what, close to 90 HP? You're doing 180 HP to whatever is up against you. And a lot of times that's going to OHKO Pokemon, which is pretty incredible. But again, the eject button is what makes this Pokemon really cool. If you don't know what the eject button does, is it means that whenever you get hit by an attack, you immediately switch out. Why is this cool? Well, first of all, ALOMOMOLA is a Pokemon with Regenerator, so you can not really have much of a pivot for something. So what you do is you naturally switch in ALOMOMOLA, a Pokemon that can tank a lot of hits and will heal by switching out. And it immediately switches out once it gets hit, so it's not like it's even taking that much damage, and you can safely switch into something else. And this came out to be incredibly useful in Professor Willow's match against Duncan, coach of the Free State Torracats, in which there really wasn't too much of a switch in for, I believe, Duncan's Garchomp after an SD, after setting up a sub and such. And so in order to save and preserve his Tangela, he actually switched out into ALOMOMOLA, which took like 70% from an Earthquake. That did a ton, but ALOMOMOLA then, had the eject button activated. It restored 33% of that HP, getting it back up to healthy, and then he could safely pivot into his Diggersby, which threatened it out, and then eventually, put in work against Duncan's team. So again, this is just really expert team building, and it came out to fruition in the exact way it was intended to do so. And yeah, one other thing I do want to comment about this ALOMOMOLA that's really cool is it's built to also take energy balls from Alakazam. Duncan has shown an affinity for Focus, Sash, Alakazam in the past, and so anticipating that, that's part of why Aqua Jet is there. You can go for Mirror Coat, definitely going to bring Alakazam down to its Sash on whatever attack the Alakazam typically wants to go for, whether it's Charge Beam, Energy Ball, even just a Psychic, and then you can pick off its Sash, its 1 HP with Aqua Jet afterwards, which is really cool. It's a really cool idea. So again, ALOMOMOLA was really cool, pretty heat, and I definitely enjoyed watching it. Now, we got 2 Mons left. 2 Mons left. What are they going to be? The next Mon is going to be ZAPDOS, coming from Papa C, coach of the New York Clinks. Now, this set isn't incredibly heat. It is just straight up offense, which is not what you see a lot of times with ZAPDOS. You'll typically see some physically defensive static sets. That's going around a lot. You'll see specially defensive sets. You might see Specs, really. You might see Scarf. And offensive ZAPDOS isn't too uncommon, but to go all out, to say max special attack, modest with a magnet. So you're maintaining your ability to choose different moves, right? While at the same time boosting up those electric stab moves, which are going to hit hard off a modest max special attack, special attack stat. And now you're probably saying, again, you keep saying this isn't like super heat, so why is it so high? Because this ZAPDOS pretty much owned the game. This ZAPDOS, I should go into its EV spread a little bit. The HP is there to take a Stone Edge from Scarf Mienshao, and the speed is there to outspeed, I believe, Volcanion before agility, and then outspeed everything, even if Scarfed after an agility. And so again, you can see that this ZAPDOS is built to sweep. And that's exactly what it did. It took out 5 Pokemon in the match that it showed up to, and it just it dominated the match. It did exactly what it set out to do, and it did it incredibly well. There was nothing to be done, and it was, it was great team prep. You saw a weakness, you built the Zapdos to exploit that weakness to the fullest extent, and then you carried out that plan as perfectly as possible in the battle itself. So good stuff to Papa C. Good job, building, and good job playing, of course. And yeah, again, this level of effectiveness is a bit higher than anything else we've seen so far. But I do want to talk about now the heat of the week. And that is going to be CRYOGONAL, coming from Jodor, coach of the Seattle Seekings. Now, why is CRYOGONAL here? It's a really interesting set. Admittedly, I'm not a huge fan of, the typical 252, 252 EV spreads, but this has plenty of HP, it has plenty of speed to outspeed the relevant threats. I do think it was actually necessary to run a max speed nature with max speed to outspeed a couple things on the opposing team, so I'm not going to give any sort of flack for that. But what's really cool here is the moveset and the red card, because this is very expert team building, in the flesh. I don't know how to say it, really, but the knockoff is there for utility, and that's exactly what this CRYOGONAL really is. You're not going to see a CRYOGONAL often, at least. Maybe if you saw me chat with Levenant in the Pick'em a couple weeks ago, he'll claim that you can see some CRYOGONAL sweep on the OU ladder even, but I'm not going to claim that CRYOGONAL is too much of a sweeper. It's more of a support Pokemon, and knockoff is a great utility move. Nothing wants to have its item lost, right? So helping out the team that way. Freeze Dry is a great stab move. It hits water types, and especially Gyarados, which is a huge threat to Jodor's team. Rapid Spin is there to get rid of hazards, which is really cool, especially when you're going up against a Donphan, which of course is threatened by the Ice Beam and such. And then he also ran Light Screen to help out with Magearna, and that's what the red card is there for too. The red card is so that Magearna, which will typically come in on this CRYOGONAL, can start like setting up in its face, whether it's Shift Gear, whether it's Calm Mind, whether it's Trick Room, whatever it wants. And after the red card is activated, that Magearna is going to be forced to switch out, where it can lose all of its boosts. And to help potentially take the hits from the Magearna, or the rest of his team take hits from whatever comes in afterwards, you can go for Light Screen. You can get rid of rocks with Rapid Spin. And, it did exactly that. It knocked off some items. It, got some damage off with Freeze Dry, and more importantly, got a freeze off with Freeze Dry. And actually, when the Magearna did come in, he was so prepped for it, he got up the Light Screen, and he just waited for the Magearna to attack. And when it finally did, it lost all of its boosts. It was forced to switch out, and it brought a Gyarados in on an incoming Freeze Dry. So it forced Gyarados to take a 4-time super effective Freeze Dry, which put it in range to eventually die from rocks, which is what happened later in the game. And it prevented a Magearna sweep, which is really impressive. It got rid of rocks right in Donphan's face, which is also really cool. And that's kind of all you can really ask of CRYOGONAL, in my opinion. And, Jodor executed his plan perfectly. So, good stuff to Jodor. Congrats on making the heat of the week for Week 6. Let me know in the comment section below, you guys, what you guys thought of this heat of the week. What you think of the 5 Pokemon. Was there something I missed? I know there was a really cool Blastoise that never really came to fruition from Papa C. I know that Bronzong from Gearheart was also pretty cool, with safety goggles and rest to have synergy with the Sylveon. There's plenty of cool stuff, and I always like to see it, of course, as much as I hope you guys do too. But that's all I got for this week. I'll see you guys next week. But until then, this is MidniteZer0, and this mission is complete.